Guys, welcome back. Today's sound design hangout is going to be continuing forward. We did subtractive synthesis, then FM synthesis, which you know is frequency modulation synthesis. Today, and I don't even know what I'm going to title the video yet because as you can see, this is a loaded one, wavetable synthesis, but it's really not just wavetable synthesis, even though I think that's the term most people, at least nowadays, are familiar with. But you could also lump granular synthesis into this, and also a type of synthesis that is called SNS synthesis, sample and synthesis. That's SNS synthesis.
You guys can own SDHO 66, the thumbnail. You can also purchase any of these other thumbnails. You will be verified on the blockchain that you own that artwork, no one else, exclusive. I create these thumbnails in Blender, a 3D computer graphics application, and this is a little look inside the Blender project.
I'm grouping them all together because at its most basic, it's taking a digital waveform that's very small, and it's using that and anything else you may be able to do with that, like on Wavetable, and it's then using that as the oscillator. Oscillator is like a waveform. So, if we were in analog, okay, which is a subtractive synthesizer, our oscillator, or also known as a waveform, is only going to be square, saw, or sine, and then noise, noise, you got that. And same thing with operator. Operator, even though it uses FM synthesis among also being able to do subtractive synthesis, but when you look at these waveforms, which is also called the oscillator, I want to drive that point home. You got your variations of square waves, saw waves, sine waves. Now, this synthesis that we're going to be doing today, wavetable synthesis, you use different kinds of waveforms, different kinds of these oscillators. And when we take a look at this yellow line, forget that we can go up and down to wave pool. That's so fun. I'm swimming in a pool and I'm drinking Gatorade and eating ice cream with my friends, and it's summer break and I don't ever want to go back to school and I just want to be able to sleep late all day. Okay, let's get off that. Okay. Sorry, a hair flew on the screen. So this is very small, this yellow thing. So think about this as the waveform, as the oscillator, but it's not your traditional square, sine, saw wave, but it's its own interesting little thing, but it's small, right? So I don't know how small that is. Now, what happens with these waveforms, whether it's this sort of a waveform in here in Wavetable, or whether it's a square or a saw? Well, it gets looped over and over again. So it's not just this wavetable granular synthesis that's a small waveform getting looped over. In fact, it's everything. The amount that it loops over is also called cycles. So there's these old audio engineers that'll say, take a little bit of EQ out at 100 cycles. And you go, 100 cycles? And then these old geezers laugh at you and they say, that's actually named for hertz. Why? Because that saw wave or sine wave, it's making 110 cycles a second, and that's what's giving you that 110 hertz that you're hearing. And if it's a sine wave, it's just right there at the fundamental. And then if it's another brighter, more harmonically dense waveform, you then have all the harmonics. Okay, and as we've seen, these synthesis methods are different ways of manipulating the harmonics over time. Subtractive synthesis uses a filter, right? But that filter is really used in everything. You always want to have that filtering ability. So then it's how do we bring out how do we manipulate these harmonics? In subtractive synthesis, as mentioned, it's just with that filter, and you start with a bright waveform like a saw or a sine. And then FM synthesis, if you've got a modern one, you're obviously going to have a filter, because why wouldn't you have a filter? We are always using filtering almost all the time, but it allows you to modulate a waveform, and that gives it the FM sound, right? And then with wavetable synthesis, granular synthesis, and you are able to start with a very unique, very different waveform such as this. And then with wavetable synthesis, it then allows you to do further modulating going through this wave table. So again, this sound, this oscillator right now is from this yellow line going left to right, looped over, and then depending on what pitch you will play, that will be the fundamental, and then the harmonics will be based on where this is. But wavetable synthesis, granular synthesis, transitional synthesis, yeah, we're going to get into it. So starting off here, I want to bring your attention first. We'll go to basics, basic shapes. This is the default. So anyways, let's drop this spectrum on here. And right now we've got a sine wave to start off with. Just the fundamental. Now, if we added harmonics by morphing this up to a saw and a square, you'll start to see the harmonics. But notice that this fundamental does not change. But the makeup of those harmonics does. Okay? Now, this sine wave is being looped over and over again. See this? 320 hertz. That sine wave every second is going around 320 loops to make that sound. And it's the same thing up here, but if you play different pitches, and the lower the cycles, the lower the hertz. So then you, of course, have... And that's why when you get really low, so like you go in very low range, like 20 hertz, 30 hertz, and you can't even really hear it. You'll almost hear like a beating, like and it's because like the cycles are happening so slow. It's like, and I'll just show you. I need to get something with a lot of. Let's see. Why would you ever do that? Okay, let's see. Hold on. I need to drop a pitch. It kind of like tums over. It doesn't even sound like a sound, you know what I'm saying? But you hear those upper end harmonics, and that makes you like can hear something that low. So in any event, let's see here, probably go back to the basic shapes, take off these warpers down here. Those are just other opportunities to do the modulation. So that's what you have. And one of these very unique, so like basically what it was is, it was like, instead of just doing like your basic sine, saw, square, what if we could just take these unusual digital waveforms and then use that to make these unique sounds, and then you would be able to, you know, use the traditional filtering, filter envelopes, LFOs, and then of course, you know, Wavetable was like, well then what if we could then cycle through? So it's like you see all of this, and listen. So you get modulation without having to use this filter envelope. Because when you're doing this, when you're moving it down here, you're missing all those higher frequencies, high harmonics. But when you have it up here, not like you would, you know, want it that high, maybe you do, but you can modulate and not lose any of that higher ends. And then you've got other other features to modulate. So you get so many possibilities. And when like I read the Ableton thing about the wavetable and read other ones, there's like, there really is no set sound to wavetable. You know, it's almost like, especially with these like modern wavetable synthesizers like Ableton's Wavetable, you've got so many. I mean, like we can do FM synthesis in Wavetable. We can do filter. We can do subtractive synthesis. You know, which is where you're using that filter to sculpt the sound. You've got so much to do that there really isn't anything else to do. I mean, and because with this Wavetable synthesizer, you can use these LFOs to like modulate any of these things. Like you don't really have any sound where someone's like, "That's a Wavetable synthesizer," you know. And then we'll also quickly look at Granulator, which is a synth that also comes with the full version of Ableton Suite. I'm assuming all of you have the full version of Ableton, which is called Ableton Suite, because you literally wouldn't be able to follow along with any of the videos I do unless you did. So I'm assuming you probably do. And if you were like, I don't, you know, I have intro or standard. And again, I don't know why they would call it standard. Maybe it's because you kind of standardly get like the things to be able to use Ableton, but like they don't give you a lot of synths. Maybe that's why. I mentioned that to say, if you were like, hey, I'm looking for a new synth, an Ableton synth to add, I would say get Wavetable. And because I was farting around on the website, I do see that I think it was like 150, 160 US dollars. Yeah, you would definitely want to get that. And you wouldn't even have to worry about operator or analog if you didn't want to. I mean, hell, buy them all, upgrade, you know, so then you get all of them. I mean, who knows what it costs to upgrade from like standard to suite or intro to suite. But yeah, so we've got this unique waveform here in Wavetable. Now I want to play lower, so I'm going to take the semitones down. Now that's too bright, so I'm going to put some filter on it. And I think I want this moving. So I'm going to go into LFO 1. And I'll keep it on 1 hertz for now. Whether I want retrig on or off, it's really up to you. It'll just, each time you hit a note, it'll start in the same spot. So maybe let's leave retrigger on, but it will move it up, then down. The good news is that we do get visual feedback here in the Wavepool. So go to Matrix, and what do we want to move? Well, we want to move this. This is oscillator 1 position over chia. So go into LFO 1, because that's where we want to apply it, and move it a little bit. It's too fast, so why don't you make it slower? It's moving too much, so I think I might take that down to 33. Now each time we hit it, it starts here, it moves up. Why is it moving up? Because the sine wave first moves up. If we wanted to apply this in the, no, we can't do negative. But what we could do is we could go to the matrix. By the way, if you escape the matrix set, and we could do negative 33, and now it's going to start and move down. What sounds better? Sounds pretty similar, but I like that. Now, I want some more punch. Now, if you see this filter frequency has been taken down, so now let's go into an envelope. Doesn't matter if you do envelope 1, or excuse me, doesn't matter if you do envelope 2 or envelope 3. I'll do envelope 3, and I want this filter frequency to start oop, and then swoop it down. And so, can you hear it? You can't, because you got to go to the matrix. Have you escaped it yet? I don't know if you guys find that funny or not. Wonderful. Now you could click a different table. And I don't care what you heard about me. That's the good thing about being so anonymous and being so introverted and being so wizard-like that a lot of people don't know who you are. Unless, of course, a lot of people start watching this channel, this show, and then people will know who you are, and then you can't hide away from the world anymore. Who the hell knows? Don't know if it'll get to that point, but it sounds good. Now, when you hear subtractive synthesis, if you are quite astute, you would say, that's subtractive synthesis. And a whole bunch of other audio nerds would say, that indeed is correct. Now, you can blur the lines with audio effects, but people pretty much know what that sounds like. FM synthesis, which we covered last time. It has a pretty distinct sound. A lot of audiophiles, audio nerds, will say, well, by golly, that sounds like FM synthesis to me. Wonderful, you know? And when you read that, if you want to, read that Wavetable Ableton article, and I actually read a few others because I wanted to see how they would talk about the overlap of wavetable synthesis, sample and SNS synthesis, sample synthesis, and granular synthesis, which are all basically doing the same thing. And yes, we will go over granular synthesis and sample synthesis. No way I was going to group it over transition. I would call it this transitional synthesis and no one would click it, but wavetable synthesis. I might do wavetable and granular. I don't even know. I want to keep it like structured. So I might just do wavetable synthesis, keep it simple. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, I think you know just, and this sounds so good. Now, when I was clicking through these different wavetables, I liked this sound better. Like, it just sounded better. It sounds like fuller, and it sounds like it's beefing up a range the other ones wouldn't. So that's the Wavetable. I actually really like this. I don't even know if I want to click off of it. Oh, that might be a really good time for me to say, why don't you click this bar, do Command R if you're on a Mac, Control R on a PC, give it a name, call it Happy Beating. That sounds weird. Happy Beating Synthy, just so it seems less weird. Hey mate, why would you title that? Nobody cares. That has no function and no purpose. Why'd you do that? Well, thanks for asking. Because if we come over here and we click this floppy disk save button, now we've got it as a preset. Yeah, we got some presets. Punchy good boy. Let's see what Punchy good boy's about. Ooh, that's so good. It's making me want to swap me bridges. Actually, it already happened. Let's see what the supernova's all about. That's mental. Now let's do our happy beating synthy. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So now someone is saying, what about that granular synthesis? You know, I don't even think it's in instruments. By the way, these like vector ones, these FM, these ones with these little dukes, these Max for Live devices, which if you have them, they will show up here. And if they don't, I think once you find them and activate them or like use them, they're in packs. I think they get added. To be honest, the main representation, before we get into how to do that in like a sampler, so sampler or simpler, which we'll use simpler because everyone has simpler. So you can do this regardless, this technique when we move to simpler, but we're not going to do that yet because I want to go to granular really quickly. They should add granulator here, which is weird because if you're going to add these Max for Live devices here, you might as well add like the best Max for Live instrument, which is Granulator 2. Don't even know what granulator follow is, but just go to Granulator 2. And it's just like the next technique we'll do where we throw the sample in there because it's sampling a small little area. See this little like yellowy orange bar, unless I've done some color manipulation, this little bar right here. that's going to loop. Like we're going to put a sample, it's going to go all the way across and it's going to loop that part. But that's what we call a grain. So in this instance, we're calling it grains, and then we can blend between the grains, and then we can shoot this grain all over here. See how it's going to be looping one thing and then it's going to be moving around if we want it. It's transitioning to another part of the wave. You're starting with one waveform and then you're transitioning to another waveform, just like we were doing in Wavetable and just like we were doing with the next one, which is why it's called transitional synthesis, because it covers all of those. But I can't find any information on it. In fact, I couldn't even find that Sound on Sound article until the Ableton What Wizards did it. So let's just, any sample matters. It really doesn't matter. Like, this is just a kick. Let's throw a very small kick sound in here. So look, it's just looping it, right? It's just looping it. It's probably going to sound louder when it's on one of these parts. So you might want to like find something that does, because look, like this is obviously a lower part in the audio. And so what we can do is we've got other techniques like the spray. Spray sounds horrible in this one. I don't even know why. So like you've got like a unique sound. No one's gonna say, hey mate, that sounds like that subtractive synthesis. I know you was using the subtractive synthesizer. I know it don't look like that on screen, but you ain't fooling these ears. You know, it's like, no, like it just sounds like this. Now that sounds bad, so I wanna get a different sound, but before I do that, so like you could do different things where you're like you can see, look, you're like scanning through it, like, ooh. And so it's good for like evolving sounds, these techniques. So you've got these different things. You can add some of this random to it. Right? So like we could put a different sound in here. I want one that's like, okay, so like this thing, this is this weird zappy sound. Would shift it tune. Listen to that. It sounds like someone's opening up their mouth. And so, and again, I don't use granulator a lot, but it's cool. And you know, I'd rather just use the free running LFO. I would honestly say the two most important add-ons to have to any like basic Ableton is to have this free running LFO, which I don't know if you have to buy like the full version of Max for Live to get it if you didn't have it, but like the LFO and the Wavetable. So like, let's put it on this file position. So I think you get it. I think you get it. Now let's go into the instruments and drop a simpler. You could also drop a sampler. And you want to just use that same stupid sample we just used. And by the way, all that crazy sound just came from this. Right. So now it's basically the same damn thing. You know, what would you do when you throw it into a sampler? Well, you would just play it. But we don't want that. We want to loop, and we want to loop the damn thing. Make sure you have loop turned on. You may need to turn snap off if it doesn't allow you. And we just zoom in on a really, like, look at this. Sounds like crap, right? And of course, you would then take a filter. Hey, you lost all the top end. Why would you do that? That's not good. You're scaring me. Why would you ever do anything like that? I can't even hear it anymore. That's ridiculous. Why would anyone want that? I'm not going to eat ice cream and drink Gatorade with you now because of that. So you do all the same stuff. Now let's give it an attack. wonderful, wonderful. And then of course there's other things you can do, but like you might say, oh, that's wonderful. It's like your own custom wavetable. You know, you got, well, no, it's not, because if it was wavetable, we could go up and down and go multi-dimensional, but this we can only move this bracket. And once you see, this fundamental is gonna change if we do. So it's not really that good to like cycle through it. Wonderful, 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 wonderful. Oh man, that was incredible. I was like, I don't know where I'm gonna go with that. So, there's one other thing I want to talk about. I don't know if I'm gonna throw down beats and jam like I did on the past two ones, although we're gonna do a lot of that. I really needed to make sure I used all of my energy to make sure that I cover these and try to cover them in as much of a succinct way as possible, but then also do a refresher and talk about subtractive and FM. And boy, this is hot. So, by the way, I know I'm supposed to say this for somebody up on the channel, because I know there's some people out there, just know, that are like gearheads, you know? Like they like making music, but they also like getting cool stuff. Well, there's a cool synthesizer, and I'm not talking about a soft synth, you know, a software synthesizer. There's a cool hardware synthesizer out there that utilizes something called vector synthesis, which is basically this thing. This particular wavetable, the fact that it goes saw to sine and then morphs between saw to square, that's what this vector synthesis did. Check this out. So you've got this hardware synthesizer, and you guys are gonna soil your britches if you haven't already. So when you're playing the synth, you've got a joystick. So yeah, a joystick like in like a video arcade game, and it had like four corners. So like one corner was like sine wave, another corner was saw wave, another corner was square wave, and I think the other corner I think was like just like this, a blend between saw and square. Why wouldn't you want to have a blend between saw and square if you wanted? And so you would move the joystick around these corners while you played if you wanted to, unless of course you had to like lock it to a position. I don't know. But imagine you're like, you know, you're like all Mr. Synthwave, and you're like playing a video arcade game because you're got a nice old arcade video game in your room. You got the joystick and the buttons, and then you say, hey, I'm gonna pause the game, and then you like turn over and you've got this vector synth, and now you've got the joystick of the vector synth, and you're playing patterns like, oh, that's a good melody, and then you have a way to like loop it, and then, you know, your room's really cool, and you probably got like sound instruments in there to tune up your vibrational frequency. You probably got some actual instruments like a bass guitar. You probably got multiple synthesizers. You probably got other things from another higher dimension because you was watching this in the future and you said, hey Gemini, I love going back in time and watching you, and now you is a hologram and I can hang out with you in me house when I put on me AR VR glasses. And it's wonderful, it's wonderful, it's wonderful, it's wonderful. So yeah, you damn well have vector synthesis here, but it's the same thing. It's like taking a digital waveform and being able to transition to another digital waveform. I mean, listen to this. Why is it so low? Oh. No. By the way, a wavetable hack is if you can play and it'll adjust this in real time. I liked -6. I mean, think about it. What if you like didn't know about wavetable synthesis and you were like playing analog or operator and you were like, and you understood it all perfectly and you were like, I kind of want to like morph transition between saw wave and square wave. I wonder what that would sound like. And then you would like go and, yeah, you would be able to do it here. And then you got all these other things, Foreman synthesis tables. Oh, mate, to hurt me bloody ears. In fact, blood was coming out of my ears. No pun intended, you know. And I'm pretty sure Granulator uses a lot, probably more than any of them. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. We didn't do a jam like we did before, but in fact, I'll end it with an amazing... You know, I started back in 2013, be coming up on my 11-year anniversary in March of 2024. It like helped me, I don't want to say begin my spiritual journey, although I guess you could say that that's actually true, but like, it allowed my mind to be able to take a break from all the things that were bothering me and bogging me down. It was as if a new portal, a new dimension was opened up, and maybe it's just because this is what I was supposed to be doing, so when I started doing it, I was like enlivened with all of this energy. I could just turn it on at any moment. Like I would just be driving around in a car, or I would be at work, and suddenly I would have an idea. I'd be like, oh, what if I could do this, that, and this in Ableton? Oh my God, what if I could do this, that, and this in the operator synth? And like, I would be thinking about it all day. I would be like, oh, what if I figured this out? And I would be like, oh, why don't you try to do this? See if you can do this. Or what about that track? What if you did this, that, and this? You know what I mean? And suddenly like my mind was just like eating this like positive, good feeling stuff. So it could like take me out of a horrible state where I'm like, oh, I'm mad about this. Oh, I didn't make enough money. I don't think this deal's gonna close. Oh, I'll never probably buy a house. Oh no. Oh, why am I in such a bad mood? How come when I'm walking down the street and I'm in a bad mood, it seems like everyone's giving me weird looks or isn't looking at me, but then when I'm in a good mood, all of a sudden everyone is like smiling, like, what is this whole thing? It was like my state of the inside projecting the state on the outside that I see. What's going on? Oh, I'm upset. I can't believe I gotta go like drive home in rush hour, and that's ridiculous, and I don't have time to do anything, and even if I wanted to work out, by the time I got home and ate, it'd be like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, then it's time to go to bed. This is such a big sham. I feel like this whole like needing to have fiat currency and needing to work a job is just a big ruse to keep us enslaved and suck all the life force out of us. So crazy, man. I'm so glad everyone's finally waking up to all of this stuff. I mean, it's so obvious, right? I've been thinking about this stuff for 10 years now. Everyone's waking up. Everyone's waking up. Anyways, guys, thank you so much. I'm glad you enjoy it. Love you all. We're going to get to physical modeling next, which basically you just use mathematics to use physics to calculate and make 3D instruments that don't exist, but they do because you can wield and harness the power of mathematics and physics to do wonderful things. You've been great. God bless yourself. God bless one another. Oh, who got some kiwis? Is that Joe who wants some kiwis? Hey, Julian. Now do the high fivey. Joe, can you do like the SDHO tone? Who? Would you give me one more high fivey? One more high fivey. Oh, he go.